So let's just close our eyes and take a deep breath. Take 3 deep breaths and come to that center place where we feel, where we know that God is all there is. That on this beautiful summer morning and on every morning of our lives, that we know that there is a power and a presence that is greater than we are. It is the power and the presence of love. It is the power and the presence of peace. It is the power and the presence of all good and only good. And what a joy it is to know in this moment and in every moment that our lives are inextricably entwined with this power and this presence, that this God is everything that we are. We are not all of it, but it is all of us. And we can use this power and this presence to co-create lives filled with more abundance, with more love, with more peace and joy. And so I just declare and affirm that this morning is a beautiful morning of connection, of acceptance, of love, of peace, of joy, of our deepening in that spiritual essence that is the very center and circumference of our being. I give thanks for each heart and each hand who has come together to create this time for us to be together, and each heart and each hand who is here participating, because that is what makes us a spiritual community, a spiritual family. And I just know that in all of the love that we share all the time, that we are all so very blessed. So giving thanks to know that every word that I have spoken moves through the law of mind and only says yes and makes it so. I know that I can release my word in confidence. I can let it go. I can let it be. And we declare this together by saying, and so it is. Amen.
This is a song from the 60s. The start of it is. And I saw Steve Stills sing this song in 1972, a couple days after the re-election of Richard Nixon. He was a little upset, and he sang his song about his upset, and things kind of worked out back then. So I'm going to sing this song today. I'm going to start with the old part of the song, but we're not in the 60s anymore, and we've learned and we've grown. So I add a little at the end for a song. Something happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me that I got to beware. He's saying, stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines are being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. Think it's time we gotta stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Something happening here. We can answer with love or with fear. We can answer from fear or from our heart. We can sure stand together and not fall apart. I think it's time we gotta stop. Hey, and what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody think about what's been going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Yo, you gotta feel what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Got to breathe what's going down. Got to care about what's going down. Gotta learn from what's going down. Gotta heal what's going down. Gotta heal what's going down. Everybody heal what's going down.
Oh my God, Petter, 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 Petter. What an amazing ending. Seriously, thank you. Oh my God. So I can get my head back. Let's everybody do what we do. You know, we have this practice of harmonizing our hearts and our minds so that we can be anchored and centered as we get in this conversation together. And so just touch your heart and take 3 more deep breaths. We can heal or we can be in fear. And here's what we're going to say together: care, appreciation, gratitude, compassion. Care, appreciation, gratitude, compassion. Care, appreciation, gratitude, compassion. Care, appreciation, gratitude, compassion. Words of healing every week as we anchor into our words of healing. So, you know, last week, Reverend Jenny and I sort of did a conversation talk about unchained spirituality, the breaking free of our minds from things that have us living small lives, but also, and more impactfully for me, this idea of the interconnectedness of all of life, that all of us are deeply connected in so many ways, and that our that our freedom at some point must include all of humankind, and to be using our freedom as a force for good in the world. Or as Ernest Holmes wrote, the divine plan is one of freedom. The inherent nature of humankind is ever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom, because freedom is the birthright of every living soul. So this week we're called to the subject once more of freedom, with the title of None Are Free Until All Are Free. And, you know, I continue to be completely amazed at the fact that these talk titles were chosen over a year ago, and just how much they have lined up with this year's life. So much coincidence in the world, right? Like always. So is it coincidence, or is it the universe moving us in our ever upward and outward spiral of life and giving us a clue that we actually just didn't really understand the enormity of? You know, I end my prayers a lot these days with a desire to be open to the surprise and amazement of the universe coming back with something bigger than I imagined. And I see what is happening now in the world, and I think this is so much bigger than anything that we could have imagined. And so here we are, unable to meet in person, and some of us feeling stuck in our homes, and some of us trying to move around and act like nothing is any different, and some of us just plain tired of COVID, and some of us using the time to dive into things that are important to us, and some of us wearing our masks and understanding that there is no loss of freedom in not spitting on other people, and some not wearing masks because, well, I can't really answer that question, but But there we have it. But all of us, and then all of us watching this social justice movement that's happening, and I call it an uprising of consciousness, and not just a demand for a freedom for all humans, but a truly deeper understanding that not all humans have been experiencing the same freedoms that most of us listening to me this morning have primarily taken for granted in our lives. All of this wrapped up in this word freedom, which shows up everywhere right now. And which, in light of this talk today, kept landing me in a question. Not just what is freedom, but what is spiritual freedom? And I know that a part of our New Thought teaching is really about the idea of being free from conditions, to understand truly that we are not bound by our previous conditions, by our current conditions, and that we are free to imagine and co-create any life that we choose if we apply practice and focus and intention to creating that life, which means spiritual practice, prayer, meditation, church, even coming to places where we are spiritually fed so that we are reminded that we are these magnificent co-creative beings in every moment of every day. But if you take a deeper look at this statement, none are free until all are free. That is not an indictment of human bondage, but an affirmation that we are all free, and that freedom requires that we recognize and act from a place of freedom for absolutely all. We also talk, at least here with me at New Thought, about how life happens sometimes, and that our spiritual practice is really about how we deal with what life brings us. I call us sometimes reality church, because, sometimes out there we get in this place of saying that, illness isn't real, or the old fashioned horrible questions of like, why did you bring this into your life? And that's not really it. I don't think that we bring on illness. We don't co-create our cancer for ourselves, and at least not at the level of our individual lives. But maybe we have been buying into a collective belief that things could not be what we would call high-level spiritual truth. We have been buying into a belief, perhaps in our life, that there must be illness, that there must be inequality, that there must be hunger. And how do we and I would say that we are called in this movement and time to raise our belief in the truth of the universe, the truth of spirit, the truth of God itself, which says that absolutely there is enough for all. The spirit didn't look around this universe and say, oh, these people don't need any, that can have nothing, and these people can have something based on some arbitrary measure that we have created in our minds. And spiritual practice will remind us that everything that comes into our life teaches us something. Every time my heart has been broken, I've had the chance to learn some truth about myself in that. We've all had those, in retrospect, I learned experiences. And so the key then becomes to not be stuck in them, to not live in them. It's one thing to have your heart broken and to be learning and experiencing and being, or to be ill or to be experiencing anything that is not what we would call this greater spiritual truth. It's one thing to be experiencing that now and learning from it and living in it and having it and moving through it. It's another thing to buy a condo and stay there. And so it seems like the key is to teach and share our lives from the learning and not from the pain. Not to ignore the pain, and not to ignore the voices of pain that are so profound around us right now, but to live in the place of compassion and the truth of love, and to live in the listening, and to learn from the listening, and to gain from the listening. Because if I stay in the pain of it or the illness of it, if I am constantly in that, I'm either still seeking healing by looking out and asking for something. Yeah, there's two choices. I can either I can either look out and continue to ask for something, or I take the learning from every experience and compassionately offer it as a light in the wilderness of someone else's experience. So what if spiritual freedom is the absolute knowing in every moment that it's really going to be okay? That it's about leaning into our practice of love so hard that we really grasp that everything, absolutely everything, is a call to greater healing, greater life. How would you lean harder into love in this moment in time? In this moment, when you want to make a difference, in this moment, when you see what is being called forward in the world, how would you lean harder into love in your response to that? A guy named Peter Santo wrote a book called The Spiritual Seeker's Guide, and he said the spiritual freedom we seek cannot be found by grasping at, retreating to, or protecting our perceived safe spaces. Our freedom lies in remaining open continuously, not only to life's changes, but also to the divine light within us and others. This is our choice. Although often perceived as a weakness, being open and surrendering to the experience of the present moment is our greatest strength. Being open and surrendering to the experience of the present moment is our greatest strength. By authentically living life in the now, we submit to divine guidance, where we find the freedom to see everything equally and sacred in truth. And man, it's so hard to live in the now right now in so many ways. We talked about this a little bit last week. We want to have answers. We want to know what life is going to look like on the other side. What we're really still in is wanting life to look like what it looked like before all of this started. But now it's coming. We're coming into a time and a space where we've been in it long enough to begin to maybe wonder, to really wonder, what could be different? How could I bring my creative energy and my creative thought to co-create something different, a life that's different for everyone on the other side? There's this beautiful dance on this very fine line between denial of conditions and compassion for what is. It's the listening and the paying attention and the lending our hearts and our love and our minds, leaning in as hard as we can to the love that we have, or buying a condo in the pain. Understanding that we are not bound by conditions is the spiritual ideal, but compassion for ourselves and the rest of humanity in those conditions is the human expression of that ideal. So what keeps us from allowing freedom for all? As I've been working through things like privilege recently, I've been asking this question a lot, because as reading and contemplating all that is happening in our collective awakening lately, I keep asking, what is it that people are so afraid of or holding on to so tightly? And I think aside from the really blatant kinds of racism that holds people as less than, which is, I'm not even going to go down that road, it seems like there's a fear that feeds the opposite of truth. We've worked really hard in our New Thought communities to come to an understanding of abundance and enough, that there is enough for all of us. And really, it is our thinking about solutions to problems that inhibits the flow of resources. And in our culture, we have built a scarcity fear and mentality that breeds distrust. It breeds hoarding, and it breeds this great big giant fear that if everyone has enough somehow, that I will not have enough, which doesn't even make sense, because if everyone has enough, then I'm part of everyone and I will have enough too. But mostly, I think it breeds this fear that I would have to give up some of my enough in order for everyone else to have enough. And below that is this idea that collective we helps people. Well, then that just isn't fair, because I had to work for everything that I have. I hope I'm making sense here. Are you with me? was thinking about the stimulus checks that came out, for example. I talked to a whole lot of people who were like, well, this is nice, but I didn't really need this. We all cashed them anyway because they came, but I didn't really need it. You know, we didn't, some of us were like, we don't really need this. So why did it happen that way? You know, I mean, this is such a good time to ask, why did we do it that way? Why didn't we send twice as much to those who are actually unemployed and needed it, and not to those of us who did not? And I think that somewhere there's this, like, because there would have been this giant outcry of that's not fair. My sister would say that fair is what you pay to ride the bus. But I would say the spiritually evolved answer would be a recognition that there is enough to care for those in need, and that my source and my supply is spirit itself, ever seeking its expansion through me. We must move beyond fair to a state of mind of equity, coming into alignment with the truth of oneness, that in spiritual truth, we are part of a united whole. And as we move towards the actual expression of that wholeness, then we would naturally want all parts of the whole to live in their full expression and potential. So what can we of spiritual awareness do? We can pray. We can stand for the truth. We can show up in the truth where we're called to show up. We will see places where it's time for us to speak up, and we can do that. We will see places where it's a place for us to feel called to donate, and we will do that. We will welcome more people of all types into our life experiences. We vote our principles and we stand on those principles. We become unwavering in our belief in the truth of the Spirit, that Spirit seeks to be expressed through all of humanity, and therefore it supplies all of humanity with enough for it to express itself in all of its beauty. Whereas Lynn McTaggart says, we're not in the field of pure potentiality. We are the field of pure potentiality. We are not in the field. We are the field. So deep breath. Today, I want to remind you that this change that we are seeing and seeking is not a sprint to a finish line. This is a lifetime practice and renewal, and that requires prayer, requires meditation, it requires play and joy. It requires life expressing. And it also right now requires some extra care for our own souls. I'm hearing from so many people who are getting the fatigues, and those are not green clothes. News fatigue, COVID fatigue, aloneness fatigue, just fatigue of it all feels like coming at us. And I want to call to you who are in this for the marathon and not the sprint, because I know you are all in this for the marathon and not the sprint, to not forget this week to breathe. You know, if you're feeling full of life and energy, please keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not, I'm going to say that your homework this week is to do a little something or a big something or something that is just for your well-being, that just brings you joy, that just brings you some peace, that just brings you a connection to the life that continues and seeks to express itself through you. And for all of you, I'm going to ask that you kind of take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you would. Take a deep breath. I want you to hear these words about you that Neil Donald Walsh wrote, and then I'm going to pray us out of this experience. He wrote, and this, I wish I had written these words for you because they come from my heart. Your light is seen. Your heart is known. Your soul is cherished by more people than you might imagine. If you knew how many others have been touched in wonderful ways by you, you would be astonished. If you knew how many people feel so much for you, you would be shocked. If you knew how many people feel so much for you, You are far more wonderful than you think you are. Rest with that. Rest easy with that. Breathe again. You are doing fine. More than fine. Better than fine. You are doing amazing and greatness. So relax and love yourself today. And as you do that, I invite you to just go within, continue to go within for that moment of breath, for that moment of connection that we know is absolutely the divine, breaking down all ideas of time and space and knowing that we are right here, right now, in one room together. That we are in this room of the Spirit. We are in this room of God. The universe itself has wrapped its arms around each and all of us together. And then in that space of the breath and in that space of our togetherness, I know that our words, my words, your words through me right now have such a power and a presence. And so today I call for words of comfort and feelings and a sense of comfort to those who are feeling the fatigues. I bring a sense of connection and togetherness to those who are feeling alone. I offer a word of grace for anyone who is feeling outside of it all in any way. And I offer words of life and energy and love moving through each and every one of us as we do our life right now. I know that great things, amazing things are happening in this universe, and I sit in my allowance of them. I give myself a break from figuring it all out, and I welcome love. And I know that the universe, that Spirit supplies that love in ever abundance. There is no such thing as a lack of love. And as I give myself over to that, I offer that love to each and every person in the sound of my voice. And I know that it carries through you to the people within the sound of your voice as you move through this week. That love happens here. It doesn't start here, it moves through here and continues to express itself in ever upward and outward and beautiful ways. And I give thanks for all of it, for the change, for the things. I give thanks for this opportunity to be together in any way that we can be together. I give thanks for it all. And I know that there is never anything that doesn't turn out good. Never. And so I release it. I allow room for the universe. I allow room for God to surprise and delight me with its response to my prayer in every moment of every day. And I just let it go. And I ask all of you to be with me in saying, and so it is.